He sued me over water. Not a fence that was an inch over the line, not a tree branch scraping his roof, not even because my dog decided to bark at 2 a.m. on a random Tuesday. Water. My damn sprinklers. Yeah, you heard that right. If someone had walked up to me 2 years ago and said, "Dan, buddy, your lawn irrigation is about to land you in court," I would have damn near choked on my beer laughing and told them to get the hell out of my garage. My name's Daniel Harper. I live in one of those quiet subdivisions just outside Fort Collins, Colorado. Nothing too flashy, just a newer development where all the houses look like they came from the same cookie cutter, but with slightly different paint jobs so it doesn't feel too step forward. We're right at the edge of town, where the land starts to roll gentle-like, not big dramatic hills or anything, just enough slope to make mowing the backyard a little more annoying than it has to be on a Saturday morning. My lot sits a bit higher than the one right behind me. Maybe 4 feet of elevation difference from my back patio down to the base of my neighbor's yard. When the whole development went in, the original owner of that lower lot had a nice stacked stone retaining wall built. Decorative, you know? With those little weep holes along the bottom so water could drain out. It actually looked pretty sharp when I first moved in. The guy who lived there at the time was Leonard Briggs. Mid-50s, retired early from some insurance company. The type who irons his jeans on Sunday nights and starts sentences with, "Well, I've run the numbers." He wasn't mean at first. Just particular. Real particular. Like the kind of man who notices if your trash can is visible from the street and sends a polite but firm email about it. I water my lawn twice a week, like clockwork. 5:30 in the morning, before the sun gets mean. Simple irrigation system on a timer. Nothing crazy. I followed the city rules, especially during those bone-dry Colorado summers when everything wants to turn into crunchy brown straw if you blink wrong. First year or so, everything was fine. We'd wave over the fence. He'd yell something about the Broncos. I helped him move a heavy grill once. Regular neighbor stuff, you know. Then one sticky afternoon in late June, he showed up at my front door holding a manila folder like it was the Zapruder film. "Daniel," he said, no smile, face tight, "we need to talk about your watering schedule." I just blinked at him for a second. My watering schedule? He opened that folder and started slapping down printed photos, close-ups of damp soil right at the base of his precious retaining wall. "This," he tapped one hard, "is from this morning. Your irrigation is saturating the soil behind my wall. It's destabilizing my property." I actually laughed. Not mean, just pure confusion. "Leonard, man, it's just sprinklers. The water goes straight down into my grass." He didn't laugh back. Not even a twitch. "You're uphill. Water follows gravity." And then he launched into stuff about hydrostatic pressure and lateral migration. He kept saying, "I've done my research," like that was supposed to end the conversation. Over the next few weeks he brought it up 3 more times, each one a little more intense, a little more folder heavy. I started avoiding him in the driveway. Then one random Tuesday afternoon, while I was answering work emails at my kitchen table, a process server knocked. That sound. I'll never forget it. Heavy, official. My stomach did this little drop before my brain even caught up. Leonard was suing me. Claimed my lawn irrigation was a private nuisance and was cracking the mortar joints in his retaining wall through increased pressure. I stood there in my socks reading that complaint 3 times, hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something that made sense. They didn't. First I felt disbelief. Then this hot wave of embarrassment. What were the neighbors going to say? The HOA? I could already hear the whispers at the community mailbox. I hired Michelle Carter, a local attorney. Sharp as hell, no nonsense. First meeting she looked me dead in the eye and said, "Don't talk to him anymore. Not a single word. And we're getting our own soil engineer out here right now." A week later, Dr. Aaron Patel showed up. Calm guy, methodical. He walked both yards, poked probes into the ground at different depths, scoped out those weep holes in Leonard's wall. His verdict was pretty straightforward. The soil drains mostly vertically here. It's clay-rich loam, sure, but at normal irrigation levels you're not creating dangerous lateral pressure. In other words, my sprinklers weren't the villain in this movie. But lawsuits don't just vanish because they're ridiculous. Discovery started. Paperwork stacked up like snow in January. Every new email from Michelle came with another bill that made my eye twitch. I started waking up at 2 a.m. staring at the ceiling fan going round and round, running worst-case scenarios in my head. What if the judge played it safe and sided with him? What if I had to rip out my whole irrigation system? What if this dragged on for years and bled me dry? Then one of those sleepless nights, something clicked. If Leonard was so convinced water was destroying his wall, what would happen if there was suddenly no water at all? Next morning I went out to the garage and flipped the master switch on my irrigation controller to off. Not seasonal pause. Complete shutdown. No sprinklers. No hose. Nothing. If water was the enemy, I was removing it from the equation completely and letting nature run the experiment. That's when things got interesting. At first, nothing much. Week 1, my lawn still looked okay. Colorado soil holds moisture longer than you expect. Grass was a little less vibrant, but nothing dramatic. Leonard didn't say a word. We weren't speaking anyway after Michelle's instructions. By week 2, though, the edges started turning. The grass tips went from green to this dull yellow-brown. When I walked across it barefoot, it didn't bounce back under my feet anymore. Felt brittle. Dead. I'd stand at my kitchen window with coffee in hand, watching the sun come up over a yard that was slowly surrendering, and it hit me different than I expected. There's something kinda heartbreaking about watching grass die, even if you know it's temporary. You put time into that thing, you know? Week 3, it was obvious. My yard had gone patchy gold and brown. The soil, especially near the top of his wall, was hard as concrete. Tiny cracks started spiderwebbing across the surface, getting wider as the 90-degree days kept coming. I caught Leonard one afternoon standing at the base of his wall, arms crossed, staring up at my dead lawn like it had personally betrayed him. Our eyes met for a second. He turned away fast. A few days later, Michelle emailed, "Leonard's team wants new inspection photos." I smiled for the first time in weeks. Dr. Patel came back. The moisture readings were way down. He ran his hand along the mortar joints and pointed out new gaps that weren't there before. When expansive clay dries out fast after being consistently moist, he explained, it contracts, pulls away, stresses the structures. During the next coordinated inspection, Leonard and I ended up in the same space again, standing on opposite sides of the property line while the engineers compared notes. That's when the twist hit me like a slap. Leonard's own engineer, this younger guy in a company polo, started looking real uncomfortable measuring those new cracks. And later in the deposition, we dropped the bomb from discovery. Leonard had built that wall himself. Designed it. No proper gravel backfill. No perforated drain pipe. Footings shallower than recommended. It was more decorative than structural. The room went dead quiet when Michelle laid that out. Leonard's face went red. Not explosive. Just this slow burn of a man watching his certainty crack right along with his wall. The depositions were brutal in that fluorescent-lit conference room. Court reporter typing every word. Leonard's lawyer trying to trip me up. "Was it your intention to damage the wall by stopping irrigation?" "No," I said flat. "My intention was to remove the variable you claimed was the problem." After that, things moved fast. They wanted to settle. Dismissal with prejudice. Each side eats their own costs. No admission of fault. Part of me wanted blood, an apology, some acknowledgement that he'd been wrong. But I was tired, man. Bone tired. I agreed. The day the case officially died, I stood in my backyard at sunset looking at my brown, dormant lawn and that wall that had cost us both way too much. The air felt still for the first time in months. No anger buzzing in my ears. Just quiet. A week later, I turned the sprinklers back on. Gentle schedule. Deep but infrequent. The grass started creeping back green, forgiving me the way only grass can. Leonard hired a crew. For 3 days there was jackhammering and the smell of fresh dirt and gravel. They fixed it right this time, proper drainage, better footings. Real engineering. One afternoon near the end of the job, Leonard walked up the slope to my fence while I was out adjusting a head. The air was thick. He looked at his shoes for a long beat. "They found inadequate drainage," he said finally. "I heard," I answered. Another pause. "I built that wall myself," he admitted, voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. "Designed it. Was proud of it." In that moment I got it. When something's yours, really yours, any crack feels like a personal failure. We talked a little more. Not friends. Not grabbing beers on the weekend. But civil. Waves in the driveway. Small nods. The temperature between us dropped from boiling to livable. Looking back, shutting the water off was a gamble that paid off. But the bigger thing that changed was me. At first it was strategy. Pure tactics. Remove the variable, let the evidence speak. But as that lawn turned brown and those cracks opened up, I started seeing how easy it is to let pride dry everything out the same way. I could have gone nuclear. Countersuit for costs or harassment. I had options. Michelle floated them. But I didn't. Not because I'm some saint. I was pissed. There were nights I rehearsed whole courtroom speeches in my head. But I realized dragging it out would have just watered the anger until it took over everything. People aren't that different from that clay soil. We expand and contract with pressure. Sudden changes make us crack. Rapid shifts after long periods of the same thing stress the joints. Leonard was so sure I was the problem. I was so sure he was out to get me. Turns out the real issue was a wall that looked strong but wasn't built right for the ground it sat on. And a couple of guys too proud to sit down with a beer and look at it together before lawyers got involved. Here's what I learned the hard way, standing in my yard one morning listening to those sprinklers tick 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 again. Water isn't the enemy. Dryness isn't the enemy. Imbalance is. Too much of anything, or sudden stops after steady flow, creates the cracks. Same with people. Same with neighbors. Same with pride. Now the lawn's green again. The wall is solid. Leonard and I pass each other with a morning sometimes. Life went back to quiet, but every once in a while I catch myself wondering, was I right to shut everything off and let his wall show its true colors? Or was that just a quiet, legal way of getting even? And was he wrong for coming at me so hard in the first place? Or was he just a scared guy trying to protect something he'd built with his own hands? I don't know. Maybe both. Maybe neither. These little wars happen in neighborhoods everywhere, over lawns and fences, and whose music is too loud. They start small but grow because fear and pride get involved. What would you have done if you were me? Would you have kept watering and fought it out in court for years? Turned the water off like I did? Or invited the guy over for a beer that first day and tried to figure it out before the lawyers showed up? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. Tell me if you think I crossed a line or did what any reasonable person would. And if you've ever been through a neighbor war that spiraled way bigger than it should have, share that story too. Sometimes the best lessons come from the cracks we never saw coming until it was almost too late.